At this time in the world when anybody can create any sort of video using AI and everything. And I'm like, because that human connection is becoming more and more important all the time. And, for businesses and people who, it's why we get together and we do this show together.
Well, hello and welcome back to AI Evolution. Dave and Ben are here. We've had a little break over the Christmas period. I'm pleased to say, and I was also thinking actually before we came on this morning. This is the second Christmas we've passed through. So we've been doing this since 2024. So we're in 2026, year 3. I think we can be quite pleased about that, guys. What do you think?
It's amazing.
It's gone quickly. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yep. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, Happy New Year to everyone, of course. So we're going to get through a few different subjects today. The plan is to just kind of perhaps highlight any silly Christmas presents we might have got and talk about them in relation to AI. And then we'll push through into what do we think might happen in 2026. And I think anyone who's keeping an eye on the news at the moment, it's almost anything could happen in 2026. I keep being reminded of the REM song, the line, "It's the end of the world as we know it and I feel fine." I'm just kind of hanging on to that idea.
Great song.
Yeah, it is a great song, yeah. But I'm not going to hang on to that. That's going to be my theme song for 2026, maybe. Okay, all right. So, look, why don't I kick off with the gadget section, and then we'll go around the room, see what you guys got up to over the Christmas break as well, and then we'll get into the kind of the future of AI, as we are AI evolution after all.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to introduce something which I think you probably are expecting me to introduce, and I've talked about a lot last year, but never purchased. I'm sort of waiting for Christmas to arrive.
Hey, there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Want to come and have a play with it?
Those not watching, it's the bright orange Rabbit R1. Arguably the most pointless gadget I've ever owned. Also, one of the most fun gadgets I've ever owned, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. But first thing it says, look how orange it is. It's unbelievable. So this was designed by Teenage Engineering, who they do make lovely kit, actually. If you look at their kind of synthesizer stuff and music stuff, it's really high end. You're going to pay like £2,000 for some kind of drum machine or whatever. So this is incredibly well made. It looks like you would expect it to be cheap, light, plasticky, and feel like if you dropped it, it's going to shatter. Not a bit of that. Absolutely beautiful. Screen actually is surprisingly good quality. It's weird because the way they've done the OS on it is very minimalistic. Yet when you do get it to run video and various things, you go, oh, actually, this screen's actually really good. It's not iPhone quality, obviously, but it costs £120. So why would you buy one of these? Would I recommend it to anyone? The short answer is no, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone because it's too quirky. So the person that buys this needs to be the kind of person that in the 90s bought MP3 players and spent hours working out how to get video to play on them, right? And likes fiddling about with technology, likes to experiment, doesn't mind when things don't work, doesn't mind when things are buggy, finds that whole journey enjoyable, which is exactly why I bought one for my son as well. So we both got one for Christmas. And he's loving it. He's playing with it because it's an opportunity to explore, try and fail, try again, do different things. What I've worked out its use cases really isn't what the company is trying to sell it as. They're trying to pitch this as the next thing, right, in AI. And it clearly isn't going to be that. And it clearly, is a million miles away from that. It's also not a serious platform. Like, if you look at it, think of it in terms of enterprise, ridiculous. And what is ridiculous is on their website, they've got this functionality about building these large action models and almost enterprise style activity. Their pricing for using their models to build vibe coding activities is almost enterprise pricing as well, although at the moment they have got it on an unlimited usage, within the standard subscription, so I've been making the most of that. But the point being is that they seem to be targeting this at a much higher market, when actually what it really needs to be is a consumer product aimed at probably teenagers and below and techie, nerdy, geeky people like me who just want to muck about and play with something and have some fun. Because actually what it's really good at is building very bespoke little apps. So I've built all these little apps in it that, for example, one would be like a music player. So I go into it and it plays music videos, pulls them from YouTube, but it only pulls videos from bands that I like. And I've specifically just told it, here's a list of 100 bands I like. Randomly pull up 10 videos every time I open this app, and allow me to pick one and play it. And it's great. I use it all the time because it kind of takes away that mental processing. Well, what should I listen to next? Oh, I just open this and there you go. So, for example, last night I opened it up and one of the options was I could play a 1964 performance of Bob Dylan at Newport at the Folk Festival. Right. I've never seen that before. I went, oh wow, that's cool. Watch that. Oh, I love that. That was awesome. The sound's surprisingly good. If you plug it into your earpods, it's excellent. It's surprisingly good at a little speaker. So look, it sounds like a bit of a sales pitch for it. But what I would say is there is lots of fun to be had. It's very usable. It's very flawed as well, and so expect problems. But if you're up for a bit of a laugh, then I couldn't recommend it enough. So there you go.
Okay, one question around it. So you've got two of them, obviously. Yeah. Can they interact with each other in any way? Like when you put two iPhones together, they kind of send information. Is there anything like that?
Yeah. Well, so out of the box, no. However, me and Albert have managed to build a walkie-talkie app, which allows us to turn them into walkie-talkies. Cool. And because it's got 3G in it, right? I could be 10 miles away. I could be in London, and we can walkie-talkie each other using the R1. So, in theory, there's a lot of things it could do. I'm going to try and look into building like a kind of texting app so I can text him and stuff like that. So it's all possible as long as you can set up a third-party server somewhere that you can both connect to, and then effectively it's running through that. And interesting with the walkie-talkie one, having done that, I was expecting the lag to be quite significant, because it's got to go and come back. Not a bit of it. There's hardly any latency at all. I mean, there's a tiny bit, but not much, and certainly not enough to make it a problem. So yeah, lots of little fun things like that you can do and explore and build. And also, obviously, there's a big community built up around the Rabbit in Reddit and online and on the internet in general. And you can find lots of apps that people have already built. All you've got to do is scan the QR code and boom, there it is. It's on the Rabbit, ready to go. So
you've basically built a Star Trek communicator just in a big form factor.
Big orange form factor.
Yeah. That's what you've done.
Yeah, it's great. It's obviously,
Does it need a SIM card, like for the 3G?
Yeah, for the 3G. Yeah. So I just got hold of a SIM card from EE. A pay-as-you-go one with 100 gig on it. Stuck it in, and that'll probably last me a year at least. Because it's not using a lot of data. Because even when it pulls video and stuff, it's very low res versions in the sense because it's not doing HD. It's a small screen, so I expect that to last long. And of course, a lot of the time I'm on Wi-Fi anyway, right? So it just connects to my Wi-Fi. So, but for £120, which is what they are at the moment, honestly, an awful lot of fun for not a lot of money. And like I say, it's not a solution to anyone's problem or AI workflow or anything serious. But if you just want to laugh and a bit of fun with your kids over Christmas, and you're quite a techie sort of person, then why not? But there we are. So that's my first gambit for today, the Rabbit R1.
Okay.
We'll go around the room. I've got one more actually, but we'll go around the room see what anything caught your eye or purchased over Christmas that was interesting for you guys.
Do you want to go, Ben?
Well, yeah, I didn't get anything AI specific, but we bought a Steam Deck, which is like a portable gaming platform for my son. And why it doesn't have any AI in it, he's downloaded a game called Arc Raiders, which is really big at the moment, and he started looking at the AI physics of how they do the drones in it and the enemies in it, and he's just saying that he's really got into using Unreal Engine and creating games with AI, and he's always got ChatGPT on the side saying, how do I do this, and it's amazing just that whole workflow of him creating worlds and starting to learn, the physics engine and how things interact with AI and how the enemies move and all that sort of thing. And he's downloading templates and tweaking with that. But he's got 2 or 3 things going on at once. There's no one tool he's using. He's starting to use 2 or 3 tools, and ChatGPT is just on the side as a tutor almost. That simply a tutor to help him learn game development or Python. And so that's been an interesting development. And I guess he's a bit older now, so he is starting to take an interest in creation as opposed to just consuming, really.
Well, that's what I liked about the Rabbit was the vibe coding aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, that Albert can sit there and create his own programs. What they could be games where we built chess, you know, all sorts of things. And so with the Steam Deck, then is how is that connected? Then how does that how do you get the programs into the platform?
It's a bit like a mini Xbox, really. You know, just a portable one, and it just uses Steam. You know, got any games on Steam, it automatically you can download them onto it and just take them with you. So, interesting enough, though, it's actually a wrapper on Linux. It's not even, or Linux, however you say it. It's not even a PC. So, whereas everything else, you know, all the games are PC only, but somehow they've managed to create this non-laggy version of Linux that has a wrapper for Windows games. So. That's pretty cool, but it's less the AI on the device and more that's inspired him to look into how the characters are using AI and how they're different for each game, and then he's starting to try to do a bit of game development around that. So it's not a direct device or a fun toy that has AI baked into it, but it's inspired a sort of a journey into using AI to develop.
And so I think there's an interesting opportunity there, isn't there, for Steam Deck and for other, you know, manufacturers of gaming platforms, is to build that kind of vibe coding in direct. One of the good things, little things about the Rabbit is you can say to it, you know, I want you to build this for the R1, and it builds it, and because it's inside the R1, it knows its interface, it knows its screen size, it knows, you know, how the controls work, how the buttons work. Everything's connected straight out of the gate. So if you had a Steam Deck and it was baked into it, and you could just say to it, describe what you want.
Make it social.
And it was building exactly for that platform and for the interface and the controls. That would be just great, wouldn't it?
And I think it's why Roblox was so popular, because they have allowed 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, I know they're meant to be 12 to be on there, but it's created this sandbox AI-driven game development that kids can just create games and they can do really well at these game creations, and it is that social aspect. And then, you know, it's definitely not the best physics engine, it's not the best game development, but it doesn't matter. It gives people a step on the ladder to tasting it, and I think that's kind of what you're hinting at. You know, and you know, compare it to the Raspberry Pi, which we got a couple of years ago, hardly ever used because, you know, my son can't find the HDMI cable, or you know, a portable monitor, or, you know, it has to be plugged in. So it just doesn't have that ease of portability and social aspect, which is what you're sort of aiming at, really.
Yeah, so I actually thought about getting the Raspberry Pi for Albert as a Christmas present, and it was exactly those reasons, this kind of friction that's involved in doing anything. I thought, you know, he's going to get probably a little bit frustrated quite quickly and then just switch off from it. Which is why I went up with the Rabbit, because I thought, well, even though it's buggy and problematic at times, it is definitely less friction, and it's sort of more immediate, and should keep him engaged a bit longer. So it's interesting to hear you say that, and I still might, when he's a bit older, think about the Raspberry Pi, but I sort of feel like he probably needs to be maybe sort of 14, 15 and really want to get under the hood, as it were, to get the most out of it.
Yeah,
for sure. Right, I'm playing contrarian role today. I feel I went decidedly analog, and I got a new watch for Christmas.
Nice.
And it doesn't even have a date complication on it. It's literally just a plain, you know, diver sort of tool, everyday wear kind of diver watch, and it's amazing. I love it, and I got to the point where I have a smartwatch. I've had a Samsung smartwatch since they came out, because I really liked the form factor. I liked that it was round and it had the kind of, you know, the clicky dial on the top to go through the menus. I've used it for all of my training. You know, it tracks my steps and my heart rate throughout the day, and I still wear it at night to track my sleep, because it tracks for things like AFib now and all sorts of like heart conditions and things that might creep up and all that. And then my blood oxygen percentage, which is horrifically low. Sometimes it gets down to like, I think it got down to 76% one night, which is really bad. Like they're like, if it's under 94, you should go to the doctor.
76.
Like, okay. But again, I wear it for that. But I started to get this feeling like it was like, I felt like I was a slave to it almost. And then it's like, I had to wear it because it was gathering all this data and all this stuff that I, you know, wanted for training and everything. And I kind of got to the point, I'm like, do you know what? I just want something simple and something plain. And so analog watch for me this year. We didn't do anything particularly kind of techie at all this year. We got loads of actual physical paper books and things like that. So, not even stuff on Kindle, which was, it was quite interesting, but, it was low tech for me this year.
That could be a thing, couldn't it? The kind of low tech Christmas, sort of, why not? Yeah.
Plus, I work with all the tech, in the studio and stuff all the time, and working with AI tools and, video and editing and audio and all the other stuff and, stuff that we've talked about in the past. It's like I'm still working with AI all day, every day. And it's almost like I've kind of got to the point where I don't want it in my personal life as much because I use it all the time. And I find, I think we're all starting to find what it's really good to be used for and what it's not, I think, good to be used for, which is going to get into what I want to bring up in a minute. But yeah, it's on a personal level, I'm sort of stepping back a little bit, but again, I'm fully into it for my work because it helps.
Agreed. I've stopped wearing my watch as well. Partly it started because I broke it. The face of it had a bit sharp, but I didn't like the constant messaging. I know you can turn that off, but I just felt a bit trapped by it. I just felt like I just wanted, I have enough of that with my phone. I have enough, but so I'm the same with the watch. But it wasn't a moral reason. It was because I broke it initially, and then I felt I quite liked it after a few weeks. And
then you're like, oh, this is amazing. It just tells me what time it is. That's all I need to know.
I just want to get myself a Swatch now.
Yeah,
fully retro.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, it's interesting you say that actually, because I often have this sort of joke with Emily, my wife, and sort of say, when I retire, I'm just going to toss my MacBook off the pier, and that's it. I'm done. And just switch off, delete all my accounts. And there is a big part of me that quite like to do that. And actually one of the weird things with the little rabbit over Christmas is that it doesn't do email, it doesn't do text, it doesn't do social media, it doesn't do any of that stuff that sucks you in. So when I do pick that device up, there's never a kind of work-related aspect to it. It's just I'm thinking about this for fun. It's a bit of fun. That's it. You know what I mean? I quite like that. So the other device I got over Christmas is another pair of glasses, a bit like these, except they're actually low tech actually when you think about it, because all they do is have a screen right inside them, and so when you put them on, you plug your your iPad or your phone or whatever via a cable, remember those, straight in to the glasses, which means they don't need any batteries. There's no charging. There's none of that. Exactly, very analog actually. You plug it straight in, and all it does, and does nothing else, is give you a cinema-sized screen to look at, basically. So whatever is on your device is mirroring on a cinema-sized screen. So you put your AirPods in, you put on a movie you like or a TV show, you sit on your bed, and there you are. You're at the cinema. It's very good. I mean, they're made by X-Real. They're the Air 2s. I think X-Real just announced a new pair at CES this week, which are even better. I think they're due out in February, so I might take a look at them when they come out. But the reality of these things are that they're a toaster. They just do one thing. They're not trying to be VR glasses or do lots of other stuff. It's not AI. It's if you want to sit down and watch a movie, and at night in the evening when it's dark and you turn the lights off and you stick these babies on. Honestly, it's like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. Like your entire wall looks like a screen, and it's very immersive. I've been watching like Foundation on it, sci-fi stuff, and I'm like, this is great. I love this. And because they're only a glass form factor, they're not particularly heavy. You haven't got this big thing on you. You don't feel locked. It's not like that. Yeah, really good. And again, price point decent. 180 quid, I think, something like that. We got them sort of Black Friday deal. I actually bought them a while ago and then put them away for Christmas as a Christmas present. But honestly, nice. Why not? If you're into your cinema, you're into movies, then and you want that in your life, then I definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. So
you've hit on another sort of point of friction, really, because the only thing I use less than the Raspberry Pi is my Meta Quest. Just have it. It's just it's a nice thing, like at parties when you want to show off but that's it. That's it.
The beauty of these things is they're a normal pair of glasses size. They get a normal glasses case. You can just chuck it in your work bag. You haven't got to charge it, right? So if you just find yourself in a hotel room one day and go, oh, do you know what? I might watch something. They're ready to go. There's no prep required or thought needed. They can just live in your bag basically. And then when you fancy or you sat on a train, you think, do you know what? I'm just going to watch something on these on the train. away you go. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds cool. And that's bleeding into kind of normal tech, but on that same sort of thread, they've started coming out with motorcycle helmets with heads-up displays inside them now.
Okay.
And because I ride a motorcycle, like I don't even own a car, I just have a bike, and there has been sort of one helmet that they were playing around, but now Shoei, some of the and I think Roof maybe be another one who have come out with them, and they seem to be really starting to take off. So it's literally inside the visor. There's a little section, and it shows you your speed, and it can show you Google Maps. So it basically connects to your phone, so you can see a miniature Google Maps, you can see your speed, and then it can also do stuff like if someone calls, it can tell you who's calling and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got all your helmet and your speakers and your microphone wired into the helmet already, so everything's pre-installed. So once you put it on, it's got everything built in. Now, if it pans out the way I hope it will, then maybe next Christmas when we do this episode, I might have a new helmet to talk about. But they're like I think they're still about £1,200.
Okay.
So they're quite expensive compared to an average, not the cheapest helmet, but an average motorcycle helmet runs about £300.
Okay.
So you're 4x the price of a normal helmet still. So they're quite pricey, but I'm hoping that over a year, maybe the price will come down a little bit, and then I can kind of justify having one. But I think that would be really cool to have a heads-up display. Then you can sort of feel like a fighter pilot.
It'd be great if when you pulled over on the side of the road, you could stream movies in it as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, you could probably do that anyway, but yeah.
And also, I guess you can change your music and all that sort of thing through it as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, and they have loads of kit now that you can do that. And a lot of the bikes, like the BMW bikes in particular, and I think some of the Kawasaki, the more touring-y type bikes, you can actually control all of that through your dash.
Yeah.
So it has basically your car link that connects to your phone, just like like the Apple Car, whatever it's called.
CarPlay, yeah.
And yeah, so it does all your maps and, your Google Maps and your sat nav and all that stuff all goes through your display. And you can control everything from the display, or you can, again, this is why I want to get to that point where I have an AI assistant, and then I can just talk to it, and it can just do stuff, particularly on my phone, which is probably why I'll stick with Google, and I might go to a Pixel next time instead of a Samsung, because it's much more tightly integrated. And if I can just say to it, hey, Google, can you change the song and play a different playlist, it can just go into my YouTube music and just change it and play it. Yeah. And then when I'm on the move, I can literally have it just change it, and I can hear it and hear different stuff, where I can answer the phone or do whatever.
If I wasn't shut.
And I'm gonna have a camera as well, so I'm getting a little, like a GoPro. I'll probably get the DJI like Action 5 camera.
Yeah.
I've got the mount for my helmet now, so I've already got that set up. So all I'll have to do is connect it to the front. I'll do it on the mouthpiece, and it will literally be like eye-line view of riding, and that'll be connected into a microphone on the inside of the helmet, so I'll be able to vlog while I'm on the bike as well. Awesome. Which will be quite fun. I'm looking forward to that.
Are you going to have it? Sorry, you're going to have it pointing towards you or pointing onto the road?
Well, I'm going to have it pointing onto the road, and then I'll do that at first. And then what I could do is, if I really want to get into it, if I like it and I find that I'm doing it and I like it and I can get it where it sounds okay, I'll probably mount a rear-facing GoPro on the top of my windscreen, and then I can have a view looking back at me as well. So then I can cut the two angles in if I want, or I can play around with doing fun angles like connecting it to the rear axle of the wheel, so you kind of get the road view.
Yeah.
From low and all that, but
or the 360 camera, get those
or get one of the 360 ones. Yeah. So
they automatically remove the pole on all the.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so that would be quite fun. So look for that as well. But that'll be again, it's not strictly AI, but it is new tech, and that'll be fun to play with.
Excellent. I didn't know that about the pole. Actually, I always wondered about that when I used to see people use 360s. I thought they must be a bit of a pain to edit afterwards, but that's.
Yeah, it automatically recognizes it, and takes
Excellent.
It out.
There we are. Well, okay, so shall we?
There we are.
We move into, I suppose that was the aperitif or whatever you call it, and we'll move into the main course. So we've got some questions to throw at you and see what you guys think. I'm sure you've got your own questions as well, but why don't I kick off with 2026, the AI bubble that we're in, is it going to burst? What do we think?
Was one of the valuations again yesterday doubled for one of the I can't remember which company it was, but I just saw someone talking about how, you know, last few months they've just doubled the valuation. And I know we've talked about that graphic before, where, you know, Nvidia are putting money into OpenAI, who are putting, you know, it goes around in a circle. Everyone's putting money into each other, and you sort of like, yeah, it's interesting. But you do look at the figures of like the amount of subscribers, say OpenAI has, and it's been the quickest, you know, accelerated graph of almost any sign-ups, and you just think, okay, there is obviously the market there, but for what they're spending, it's hard to see that sustained, isn't
they
it?
are losing market share quite quickly now. I saw the stat yesterday saying that I think Gemini is now about 25% of the market, and you think back to maybe even 6 months, a year ago, it was way lower than that. It was sort of, you know, 5 or 10% or something. So, well, I suppose that's expected. I mean, it's like Tesla car sales, aren't they, as a market percentage, you know, plummeting, but that's because other manufacturers are getting into the game, of course. But I wonder whether the big boys really care if the bubble bursts. I think it will almost do them a favour, you know, because overinflated evaluations are probably not good for anyone in the long run anyway. And also, the company that's really going to get damaged by this will be OpenAI, because they're a one-trick pony. You know, the Microsofts, you know, the Googles, they're so big, they've got so many other services and products that this is just one thing. And they'll be fine, they'll be absolutely fine. OpenAI, on the other hand, you know, it could be the thing that brings them down. And also maybe Anthropic, although as I understand it, they're very heavily backed by Amazon, so perhaps they would be okay.
There's been a really big push socially at the moment for Claude as well. I've just seen, I don't know why, but it's just been, particularly in the vibe coding space, it's just been really, really pushed.
Yeah.
But I think the difficulty is, beyond enterprise and the person at home, nobody wants more than one subscription. Like, no one, you know, I think a lot of people that I know that aren't, you know, work for themselves, or you know, smaller companies, they have one subscription and they've gone on to OpenAI because they found it so useful, and then they've run out of credits, and then that's how they've got onto it. But they're not enterprise or corporate users. So I think that market is still going to be there. But I think, yeah, definitely, like, I mean, Google has this is so Google, isn't it? They have so many tools, you know, but they're all in different places and not, you know, together. And so, you know, I'll use LM, or I think it's a fantastic tool. But I don't really use some of the other Google tools, which are just as amazing, because they're different places, and I think is classically Google.
It's a really interesting space, isn't it? Because Google kind of don't really resonate in the enterprise space. It's all Microsoft. You know, in the consumer space, you know, you've got Apple dominating the phone market to some degree, particularly in America. Which, you know, imagine if, you know, you were talking about the Pixel a minute ago, Dave. Imagine if that was sold as well as the iPhone did. You know, this would be done, wouldn't it, in terms of consumers? You know, that's it. It's over. OpenAI wouldn't even exist, really. But because OpenAI have sort of made that land grab of being like the Hoover, haven't they? You know, the kind of, it's when people talk about AI, they talk about ChatGPT. It's just got that name that now people.
Well, they had first mover advantage. They were the first one, and so they became almost the Google, right? Like, they're almost the descriptor for AI. Yeah. Is people just say ChatGPT, even if they mean Claude or Anthropic? Like, that's just become the term.
The Hoover.
The collective noun for AI is kind of ChatGPT. But what I see, what's interesting because of that, what's interesting for me is, like, I've started to use Gemini more. I really like the Nano Banana, and some of the video tools and the imagery that comes out of it is much better, I think, and higher quality. So for a lot of the stuff that I do, I've started really using Gemini more. The problem that I have is that I've trained ChatGPT so much, and then I have all of these separate GPTs for different projects that I work on, that I've spent, you know, my studio one, I've spent hundreds of hours training that, and it's got, you know, hundreds of documents and loads of feedback and all that stuff that's been trained. And now I go to Gemini, and Gemini doesn't have any of that background or any of that training, and it's like I've got to start over. And so I suspect that that there is that problem of being able to move those models to somewhere else, and you're going to get luck in because some people just aren't going to be willing to start over. And it's, even I'm looking at it and just going, even though Gemini is tied into my business Google account, so it has access to all my company documents and all my emails and all the everything, right, that it can use, it still doesn't have all the stuff that is in the ChatGPT.
But I think this is a bigger issue as well for the average Joe.
Projects.
I mean, we're obviously AI heavy users. We're in our own little bubble to some degree in the AI world. I mean, stop someone in the street and say, well, which AI models do you prefer? They'll be like, just what are you talking about? And so I think that the kind of frictionless, whichever model's available to them will win. I mean, do we think that Gemini is going to become the model that it sits behind Apple's products, at least in the medium term? It's certainly going to be powering Siri for the next few years and other things, no doubt, on their platform. So with that in mind, maybe that is the kind of land grab that kind of secures their position. And then, what OpenAI have effectively is an app. But if a user using an iPhone, the average Joe, thinks, well, actually, I can already do this without opening that app just by asking the phone, then maybe they start to do that. Or maybe people quite like opening apps and just having a particular place to go to do their AI thing, and not have Siri do it particularly. So,
exactly the feel I have with OpenAI at the moment is I just like opening the app and it's all there and I can make images in it. Whereas I know the Google stuff is better, but I have to go to 3 or 4 different websites, and I'm never quite sure how it's tied together. And there's so many services that are brilliant. Besides LM, which I use, which I just think is probably my favorite AI tool at the moment. I just think that having that app and it's all in one place, I just really like that. Even though I know it's probably a bit of a generic, not the best at specifics kind of tool.
The OpenAI app is actually very good. I mean, you can see that they're really working hard. I certainly know the iOS app anyway. They're certainly working really hard to make that like the everything app. And by having an app store baked into the app with all these other services that you can connect it to, does start to make it really quite powerful. And when you compare it to something like Claude's app, which is woeful, I mean, look, Claude in the enterprise space, as we said a minute ago, really popular, and I think they have the biggest market share in enterprise, actually, Anthropic. But when it comes to consumer level usage and certainly iOS, their app is appalling, and to talk to it is almost impossible. You have to kind of keep pressing the button, and you can't just have a free flowing conversation. It has almost no other connectivity. It doesn't do image generation. There's so many things it doesn't do that you would never really go to it. And I think that's the one thing that probably OpenAI are now kind of banking on, is that even if they haven't got the most advanced model in terms of just straight out performance, that they've got the best platform for them.
The best average.
So it's good is good enough for most people, and the platform is the most frictionless and easiest place to come to do your AI stuff, whatever that might be, and it's as connected as it can be with all your other things that are going on within that ecosystem on your phone. And I think that's probably their play at the moment. So I think they've probably worked out they can't outrun Google in the long term. And look, Google probably can't outrun the Chinese in the long term, can they? So
no. It was interesting about the Manus thing being moved to Hong Kong so it can be purchased as well. That's an interesting development, that some of these Chinese AI companies are now being looked to be bought on the international stage, and that's an interesting development as well. And whether that will actually happen and the Chinese government will allow that will be interesting. But
that was the story over Christmas that depressed me the most. Actually, was Manus being bought by Meta. As soon as I saw that, my heart sank. I was like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah, you quite like Manus, don't you?
An awful lot of different things, and I think it's got really good intelligence. I think head to head, when I put it up against Gemini and Claude on a straight out, deep research project, it's better in most instances. In fact, I'm not going to say it's as good as it outperformed it in most instances. There are some occasions when the others gave me a better output. But mostly, I would say 7 or 8 times out of 10, I'd look at the Manus one and go, yeah, that's the one I'm going to use. You know, it was really good. So yeah, the thought that Meta, because what are Meta even doing in this space? You know, and actually Manus as a product, I don't see what the fit is with what they're doing. You know, it's a deep research AI system, and then you know, Instagram. So it's kind of like, where's the Venn diagram here of these two products? You know what I mean? And I just
it feels like a panic buy almost. Like, you know, we don't know what to do with it, but we need it. It feels, you know, we're going to buy it before anyone else does. Type.
My worry is that he'll just strip it. He'll just basically strip the assets, take the people that work there, basically an acqui-hire, you know, and say, hey, you know, you were working on that deep research stuff. Guess what we've got lined up for you now? You know. Instagram, come and develop that with us, you know, and I just.
But I mean, if you look at the data that they've got really like access to a massive training set that they could really use, you know.
True.
And so, you know, if they're looking at a tool and they're saying, right, we need a tool that's fully built that we can then literally plug into all of our data and let it go and train itself against that, then, you know, that then becomes maybe more interesting for them to have a tool that's sort of specialized for the type of content. But then again, you just get total shit on Facebook and I mean, Instagram is, you know, now I think Instagram Reels, I would shudder to think how much of the Reels are probably, you know, AI generated. I have some stats on YouTube, which we'll talk about in a minute, and some thoughts about where I think it's going to go. But, you know, we're getting more and more and more and more AI content being created, and that sort of poisons the well.
And I think
so you know, it's going to be.
I think.
We've circled around this topic for a while.
You know, I think if the approach from Meta is to allow the Manus team to crack on, and here's a load of extra data you can train with and make your model better, then brilliant. My worry is that Mark Zuckerberg isn't going to do that. He's going to try and repurpose it for his aim and his needs, or, you know, Instagram's needs, you know, WhatsApp or whatever, and unfortunately then we'll see the kind of brilliant deep research tool just kind of fade away over time. I hope that doesn't happen, but why don't we talk about the video stuff then, because that's a good segue, Dave.
Brilliant. So the Guardian on the 27th came out with an article talking about, they did some research and they found that more than just over 20% of videos on YouTube are AI.
And what do they mean by that? Do they mean?
Well, they're defining that as specifically as AI slop as well,
okay. The video is generated by AI as opposed to just they've used AI to generate the script.
The video is generated by AI, and it's literally there to be a click farm. Yeah. So it's not particularly creating anything of any value. It's just there to generate views. And they surveyed 15,000 of the world's most popular YouTube channels, the top 100 in every country, and found that 278 of them contain only AI. That's a very small percentage. Out of 15,200 is not, you know, nearly 300 isn't that much. But the bigger thing for me is how much money is involved in this. So, you know, those channels are getting like, you know, $178 million YouTube paid last year to those channels. And I find it hugely, you know, I know I've mentioned that on this, you know, on this show before, but, you know, there's nothing I hate worse than, like, I'm looking up how to do something and then this video pops up and it's just AI telling you how to go through and how to do something in maybe DaVinci Resolve or some bit of software or something. And it's like, instantly I close it. I'm like, I have no interest whatsoever in some fake voice that's obviously, you know, been generated fully with AI, because the script isn't natural spoken English. It's not even, you know, it's not a well-written script anyway. And it's a fake voice and it's all B-roll that's been created by AI. And I'm just like, no, I'm not participating in that. And I think the knock-on effect of this is now a lot of the platforms are, you know, YouTube is aggressively trying to find those videos and remove them. It is against their terms now, so you're not supposed to be posting these types of videos anymore. And YouTube, you know, does reserve the right to take them down. And I think they're probably taking, you know, tens of thousands of them down every day. but people just keep putting them back up because they work. And even in the short term, if they can generate, hundreds of thousands of views, or millions of views, then, they're still getting money from it, and it's enough to cover the cost, because it basically doesn't cost them anything to make it.
Yeah.
But I think, and there are some other tools that are coming out that are specifically designed to identify AI content and content that's been also modified using AI, even small bits of it, so that they can, start to weed these out at the upload level. So part of the analysis process, for example, on YouTube could be that it actually determines whether your video is AI or not, and it just won't even put it on the platform, which I think it probably wouldn't be a bad thing either. But I think there's starting to be that little bit of pushback, which is good. And I'm starting to feel that, people, there's tons of funny reels on Instagram that you see, and, you get bears jumping through bathroom windows, chasing deer, and, kids petting bears on their front porch and all. Like, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And some of the stuff with Trump that's come out recently about Venezuela and that sort of thing, absolutely comedy genius. But the subtext to that, and I think some of that stuff is fun, but the subtext to that is what separates that from somebody creating a video that's just slightly off, and it's just a very slight modification of something someone said. So if Trump says, I support Israel, and how difficult is it to say I do not support Israel, right? And slipping just a tiny little bit in that no one would ever notice. And it's those little things that I think over time that's where we're really going to find a problem. And so I just think that we're starting to get a little bit of pushback from people, on things, and companies now are starting to push back more and more and saying, we don't want this kind of AI content on our platform. Yeah. And I think as we go through 2026, I suspect that we're going to see more and more of that. And again, when we talk about this next year, I suspect that, part of this conversation may be, some of the platforms have taken some big steps to really try and weed this out, and maybe that starts with journalism, and it starts with your news sites, and it starts with those sorts of things. But, I do feel like there is a little bit of a growing worry about some of this content.
Sorry, Ben, go on. I suppose the question would be, is this any worse than anything we've seen in the past? So if you go right back to the printing press, when that came out, everything that was printed thereafter wasn't always truth, was it? It was people with their own agendas and lies. You look at the newspapers in the UK currently, they're blatantly writing, just mysteries and lies the whole time. We've seen it on television, we've seen it, in film and cinema, in all sort of forms of medium, radio, everywhere. You will see lots of people misrepresenting and mispresenting information. And of course, we're going to see that in AI. So I suppose my question then is, well, okay, how worried should we be about that? And how persuasive is it? And is it inherently more dangerous than somebody reading a newspaper? And because we've sort of got, I wonder if people, like with newspapers, I pick up, if I go and pick up a tabloid newspaper, I'm going to look at it and go, okay, well, that's probably nonsense. And do you think that people will just become conditioned with video AI? They're just kind of looking and go, do you know what? It's saying that, but that's probably not true, actually. That's probably just somebody making it up.
I think the difference is up until, probably 2 years ago, if you saw a video of someone standing up in front of a crowd, talking to the crowd, you could, with 99.9% certainty, think that that's exactly what happened. And seeing the video, you're like, okay, that's what that person said to that crowd at that time. That's no longer true. And yes, technically there was probably the technology to do it. You could do CGI.
Well, I mean, look at the Donald Trump thing. There was no AI in that. They just edited smartly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the BBC that was, yeah.
Yeah, and I get that, but even still, there's an edit in there, right? If you see it visually, there's an edit in there because it was a totally different part of the speech. So you're going to see a jump cut, and you're going to see that that's a different part. If you hear the audio, that's different. I totally appreciate what you're saying, but I think the difference is if you're going to watch a film, you expect that to be fiction. So that's one thing. Yes, we've seen CGI. We know, there are no superheroes and people don't fly and all that sort of shit. But watching something on the news, or you seeing a clip of something that happened that was purportedly real life, or you see someone in a fire, or you see an incident that happens where a car drove into a group of people or something like that, you're like, that was recorded, and that was, we were certain that that's what happened. But we're now in an era where we don't know that that's what happened, and 98% of it may be accurate, but that 2% of it that's been changed could completely change the entire meaning of what happened at that event, and we have no way of knowing whether that's true or not. And so that it's that last piece of truth that I think that we could hold on to. We can't hold on to
changes,
anymore.
Isn't it? Really, that you wouldn't necessarily spot. But do you think people just? Yeah,
that's what I'm worried about. Yeah.
Over not this year, not next year, but say 10 years from now, people have just kind of learned to recognise that actually we shouldn't trust anything we see whatsoever on any level.
I mean, yeah, that's the bad part, right? So we're now back to a point where
very postmodern.
unless you're at a political rally and you're standing there and you're listening to the candidate yourself, you can't trust what anyone says happened, because you could, in theory, get 3 different videos of the same speech that say different things.
The thing about that in sort of psychology is, if you go and ask 100 people at that event what that candidate said, they'd probably give you a different answer each as well. So
you all get slightly different versions.
You can't trust what you hear yourself. This is kind of...
Yeah.
But we touched on this in a previous episode where we were a bit defensive about people calling AI videos AI slop, and that there's some good stuff in there. But I think you're right. The now when you have AI auto-generating the script, auto-generating the voiceover, auto-generating the clips, it is becoming. It is like I've changed my mind on it. That I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I don't want it. But interestingly, I saw someone on LinkedIn the other day saying they got a proposal rejected because the company said there was too much AI in the proposal. And he's like, well, of course there is. I'm a one-man band. If I spend 4 days writing a proposal, I don't get paid for that. And it's generated an interesting discussion around what is a good use of AI and what's a fair use of it. And I think it's really difficult because, like, if you're going to create a YouTube video and you're not particularly gifted at writing, but you've got great ideas, then you can help, you can get a script written quite well, and then you can change it to be your voice. And I think it's where we draw the lines on these things. And I think when you have almost like an automated process, someone says, create me a channel, churn me out 15 pieces of content, and it is almost just like a server farm of slop, really. It is. I mean, I don't like that expression, but it degrades all the other content, even content that's been... AI has been thoughtfully used to make better and been a partner in the process, as opposed to just go off and do this. And I think that's the difference for me. Yeah,
and I was just looking for the name of the company. So there's a company called Inception Point AI, and they're the ones who've created 3,000 podcasts a week using AI. So AI auto-generated, they auto-do the voice, it does everything. And they have 400 million subscribers.
Let's get on that, guys.
No, sorry. They've got.
What are we doing?
It's 400,000 subscribers so far. But again, it's former Amazon and Wondery executives who are setting this up, and they're just churning out content, and people are listening to it. This is the thing. So, at what point, do we want to? I mean, maybe some of it's useful. Maybe they've got 1 or 2 that actually really generate some interesting stuff, and it's really good. And tons of it will be total rubbish and, not worth listening to. But this goes back again, and it's something I've said before, and I will continue to say, which is, people ask me, why have I opened a studio? And, at this time in the world, when anybody can create any sort of video using AI and everything. And I'm like, because... that human connection is becoming more and more important all the time. And, for businesses and people who, it's why we get together and we do this show together. Do you know what I mean? And we have a human conversation, because I think that us being real people still and will continue to set us apart from a lot of the other content that's being created as well. And humans are going to become a niche. and we're all going to become really expensive. And if people want real humans to do stuff for them, it's going to, it's going to become really, really expensive. But, in theory, you'll get better content. It may not be more accurate or whatever, but it will, maybe it will have more soul.
Maybe we need to make this live so people know we're not editing. Although after the microphone incident earlier, maybe that's not.
No, but that would have been totally fine. Again, this is the thing. And, I totally agree. I think live broadcasting and live podcasting and that sort of thing is probably the way forward, for that exact reason. And you can say, look, people call in or, ask us a question while we're broadcasting and we can answer it real time. And then, but at some point somebody will create an AI that can do that as well. I
think when you get to the point where it's AI is just doing everything and it's interacting with each other, and it's like, it's a step too far.
I still want an AI assistant.
I might be standing in the field of my own slightly about this. I'm pretty relaxed about the whole thing. I just sort of feel that, humans have been, and I still stumble at the idea that it's humans that create the slop, not AIs. The AIs aren't waking up and just doing them themselves. The humans are prompting them. But I suppose I just feel that humans for let's take music. For the last 20 years have been musically producing slop. Videos they've been making. It just feels a continuation of a very long trajectory in art that we've already been on. Here's just a new shiny tool to do it at scale that we couldn't do it before almost. But which I'm hoping at some point what happens is and back to your point that people value authenticity and reality, that it finds its level, that people stop watching these videos and stop clicking on them and actually start clicking on the human ones, and so they become prioritized by the algorithms, and it just kind of finds it somehow balances. Hopefully, but
I hope so.
Maybe it won't. So speaking of something that's not AI slop, and I'm going to use this as a sort of weird segue, but either of you two fans of the program Father Ted? 90s comedy about Catholic priests, very funny. So I was watching an episode of that over Christmas, as I want to do sometimes. It's a bit of a favourite of mine. And there's one episode in particular where it's about the European Song Contest, and the main character is Ted, who's the sort of the older priest, if you like, and then the younger priest Dougal are trying to make a song for this. And so they're sat in their bedroom, and he's got the keyboard, and Dougal plays a note, he goes, ding, and Father Ted goes, "Whoa, I like that." And then you see the clock wind forward about 20 hours, right? And then the room's full of smoke and they're still there. And Ted's just looking at Dougal going, "Just play that effing note," And as soon as I watched that episode, I went, that's what vibe coding feels like. You type that first prompt and you go, "Ooh, that looks quite good." And then 2 hours later, for God's sake, it just won't change the little things that you need to do to make it actually work. And I thought, maybe I should post it up as a kind of, as an allegory for vibe coding. But so my question is, with vibe coding, is it going to actually become something that's useful in 2026, or will it remain a fun demo? And maybe we can tack onto that agents as well, actually, because I think a lot of time agents just kind of, they're a good demo in principle, but the moment they hit the real world, they just kind of go and disintegrate. What do we think?
Ben?
Well, I've created apps that have been useful for myself that haven't been out there. So for me, I love vibe coding, but I have a bit of programming background, not huge, but I certainly know the principles and I can tweak other code that's been written. And I love it, but it is frustrating. And I think, like all these things, generative video, generative imagery, it's initially you think it's going to be a lot easier than it is, and then you hit the walls, you hit the uncanny valley, you hit lip sync issues. It's the same process. It's not easy. None of it's easy. You have to become proficient at curating and directing something, and that's not an easy process, and you have to change your mentality. But I have still created useful apps that I use, and my nephew created a really cool photo app. It's taken him months to do, and he's had the same problems, but he showed it off at Christmas, and my son then started immediately trying to do an iPad version with ChatGPT, and got quite far in a few hours sitting on the sofa with him, and I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. If you are, late teenager, young 20s, you've got a creative spirit, and you want to tinker, I mean, you can just create so much, and it is frustrating, but that's part of the fun of it, I think. If you change your mentality from like, I'm going to sit here and say, create this app, go off and do it, and it's going to be perfect, as opposed to, this is going to be a process of me learning how to interact with a large language model. This is, a process of me learning a bit of programming so I can tweak it, and I can look at the security of, it's more that. It's not a one sort of prompt miracle, I don't think. I mean, maybe it will get like that, but I think then you're missing out on some of the fun of it as well.
I think having a little bit of software knowledge myself as well, I find it quite funny, because the irony behind it is that if you want AI to create some code for you, you have to very specifically define what it is that you want that code to do, and then it can write it for you, right?
Yeah.
But writing code is very specifically designed, telling the computer what you want the computer to do. So it's only one step removed from actually. Do you know what I mean? That's what code is. The writing the code is very specific instructions telling the computer what you want it to do, just at a level of detail that most people aren't able to recognize. And then, of course, there's the syntax around it. So it is like knowing French or German, or so. It's another language that you know. But it is defining at that very minute level exactly what you want that behavior to be and how you want it to work. So I suspect that, and again, I've said this many times, but I suspect we are going to come up with eventually a very specific tool that will be very good at doing that, but it will be very good at doing it for software engineers. So your regular everyday people, I think, are still going to struggle, because most people don't have the vocabulary and the understanding and the knowledge to describe in enough detail what it is they need the thing to build to get what they want. It's never going to work, because there's so many things to consider that people just don't have any idea. And
you're right.
I think it's a bit of fun, but I do think for actual software engineers working in big engineering firms and stuff like that, or that are building, big tools, I think if they need a specific function, and they want to, they know exactly how to define exactly what that function is that they want it to do, then I think it could be really good for that. And I think it's also probably, AI is very good at refactoring old code. Yeah. So you could give it some old code and say, here's something I've got. Can you make this faster? And can you make it more secure? And can you make it work better? And it might be able to go in and rework code that it's already got, because it has that detailed instruction to start with. But on a general scene, I think it's just a bit of fun. For a normal everyday person, I think I would struggle, even with a little bit of software knowledge, I would struggle to make something that actually worked the way I wanted it to.
I agree with Dave, and I think probably what you're describing is the next 5 years. I think beyond that, it's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, I think beyond that, for 2030 onwards, we could be looking at a very different capability. But I think for the next 5 years, in terms of meaningful use of vibe coding on the scale anyway in industry, it's going to take actually skilled people to use those systems to get the most out of them and make them actually work. And same with agents, really. I think the agent thing as well is something that ultimately, eventually, AI systems will be able to sort of detail and drive themselves a lot more. But at the moment, if you want something that's going to be robust and work in the real world and stand up to, stress testing, then and other threats and attacks, then you're going to have some very skilled people working to develop that. I don't think you can have a complete novice just chatting to a system and expect it to be deployed and everything's going to be fine. It's good.
Yeah.
No, but where I think it really stands out for the younger generations is, how old do I sound? But it's an accelerant to learning. If you want to do programming and you want to do development, you want to do software, you can just accelerate that process so quickly. And if that's your passion, I've just seen this. I mean, you've probably seen this with your son. I've certainly seen it with my son and some of my nephews. Is they are making stuff and they have an interest in learning the languages, and it accelerates their learning by tenfold, I would say. And I think that's a really interesting. Yeah, it's like almost like you learn by doing, and then you have to fix. So it forces you on a journey. But I can't remember who. Someone really big in the AI scene said recently the next major programming language is going to be English.
Yeah. Well, or the native language, whichever country you happen to be in. I think that's true. It's logical.
Right. I'm conscious of time. We're at an hour already. And I have one non-AI related topic in question, and just to throw in very quickly, just to get your thoughts on it, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the article lately, but and I'll find a link to it. But basically, a 23-year-old woman is now in the process of being trained to be the first human to go to Mars, and it's a one-way trip.
I've seen that.
So I was just curious to know what we think about that.
Is she a healthy person? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, pioneer, is she?
It would take a lot, as you say. It's a one-way trip, so there's not much glory in it, because once you go, that's it. You're kind of cut off from humanity anyway. So any glory that you might gain from going is.
But someone's got it. I mean, someone's going to have to do it at some point.
5-year diagnosis or something, and it's like, well, I'm going to, I might as well go out in a blaze of glory or something. But or somebody as insane as Elon Musk, maybe we just kind of go, yeah.
Or it's somebody, I mean, she's 23. How long is it going to take to finish let's say 7 years of training, and who knows before, how long it's going to take to actually create the tech to get a human there alive. So that's a whole separate thing. So we could be still looking at 20 years down the road before she actually leaves. But it's, I've been asking everybody, sort of taking an informal straw poll, like, would you do it? And what do you what were your thoughts? And it's been quite interesting. So I saw you shake your head no, Ben. So I assume you're not down.
No, I'm a bit claustrophobic. So being in a rocket for however many months wouldn't suit me.
Yeah.
Would
or a
the
spacesuit.
human body even cope with being in sort of weightlessness for that length of time? I mean, 7 years.
I mean, I think well, but again, you're not coming back to Earth, so you've got different considerations. But I assume that, they've had people on the space stations and stuff for ages, so I think they're pretty good at understanding. But again, that's low Earth orbit. That's not open space, right? Yeah. So there are other considerations. I also assume that probably what they're going to do is send a ship maybe 6 months ahead of her that's going to go and land, or we'll drop some supplies and stuff down, so she'll have like a hab unit and stuff, and it could probably just build itself once it hits the ground. It could probably build a some sort of place where she can stay and live and have shelter and that sort of thing. But
like Martian. Have you seen the film Martian?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you get a really bad toothache. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah. I find it. I think it's really cool for me as a person that hopefully I'll live long enough to be able to maybe see that, at least to see her leave.
Yeah.
And humanity as a whole is in the process of actually sending a human off to somewhere like that. It's and look, I don't care if I was young and I was single and I didn't have a family and everything else. Would I do something like that? I probably would.
I'm gonna
actually.
Let's put some numbers on this then. So okay, I'm gonna say no human feet on Mars before 2045. So is that 19 years? Yeah.
Okay. You heard it here. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of challenges just in the technology of the ship and actually being able to get someone there and to get boots on the ground. I agree. I think there are a lot of technical challenges to do that. But who knows? People talk about actually getting into open space and the radiation and all that, and if the astronauts really did go to the moon, then actually we've proven that you can go and sort of be in a capsule in open space, and that was basically a tin can.
Yeah,
like that's ridiculous. The ships that they went to the moon on. So if you can go to the moon and you can do that, then you're fine, and you should be able to go to Mars. It's just, can they do something that's big enough and has enough sort of propellant to get you that far, and then Anyway, I just thought it was really interesting.
The way the world is going at the moment, we might all be queuing up actually to get on that rocket in 10 years' time.
Well, this is the, yeah, exactly. This is what my wife said. My wife said everybody will be ready to escape by then. So,
but imagine in terms of not only the difficulty in going through open space but the psychological impact of living on a planet on your own. That obviously that's a huge thing to consider as well. Great for introverts.
Yeah, exactly. And and again, they've done so much testing with like people in the deserts and all that sort of stuff with, preparing for this for a long time. So I think they probably have a really good idea of the personality type that it takes and stuff like that. But again, I think if you were in the, if your point is that you're going and you're doing this for humanity, and because there's explorers that do crazy stuff for decades and they've gone off alone. And they've been alone in wilderness, and they've been alone, and basically were one-way trips that they knew they were probably not going to come back from.
Yeah.
And people have done that forever, so it's not, from that perspective, it's not that unusual, I think, for a human to do it. It's it was just interesting, the timing, and that it's that it's happening now, and maybe we have maybe AI and some of the tech that we have now is enabling us to be able to do that in some sort of way that's possible.
It's the shame for it, isn't it? Someone like Armstrong, comes back from the moon, and then he can dine out on that for the rest of his life. But with the moon, you don't get to do that. It's not the moon. With Mars, you don't get to do that. So,
Mars, yeah.
But I think there'll be plenty of people, in a population of billions who'll be up for it.
Yeah.
And they probably send a couple. After that, do you know what I mean, or something, and you send a couple of people,
actually.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But just
exactly,
and people love to be the first, don't they? And
of course, yeah.
He wanted to go, didn't he?
And that's
sure. I'm sure at some point Elon said he would go. So we were all kind of, keeping our fingers crossed.
Maybe it's another one of his girlfriends.
Well, look, maybe we'll wrap up. I've got one last thing just to finish on. Probably keep it fairly short because it's too controversial. But the world order, we have mentioned it a couple of times. It's hard to not think about that, isn't it? And do we think this affects business? Because I was walking the dog this morning and I was just thinking, if I'm a company right now, am I just looking at the state of the world and just thinking, do I want to invest heavily in anything at all, given what's happening sort of globally, or do I just kind of hold back for 6 months and wait and just see how some of this stuff plays out? Do you think we'll see a bit of a kind of economic pause, or do you think everyone's just going to plow on regardless? And particularly around AI development as well, do we think that gets kind of held back in any way, or people just crack on?
I think it's a strange setup at the moment, because you've got the pace of change is just, you can't keep up with it. Something new every day in technology, AI. Even the Atlas robot came out at CES last week. The rate of change is logarithmic, and at the same time, business doesn't have confidence, and it's a really weird mix. It's like, obviously people are spending on Nvidia chips and cards and AI and technology, but my feeling for certainly in the UK, business wise, people don't want to spend money. They don't know. There's not confidence in what's going on. You've got massive things going on around Venezuela, Middle East, and I think there is just possibly a sit out and wait on a lot of other non-tech businesses. I don't know what you think, David, with your businesses, but certainly there isn't a huge amount of cash flowing around business at the moment, and people don't seem to want to spend. So I think you've got two things going on there.
Yeah, I broadly agree. But what I have noticed, just personally, anecdotally, among a lot of the other business people that I know and business owners that I know, is the general feeling that most people seem to have is that 2025 was almost like a treading water kind of year. Nobody really made much progress. Everybody they were like, I ended up, reflecting and thinking it's almost like I kind of took a year just in neutral and didn't really kind of engage and didn't know why. But everybody seems to be like fully on it for 2026, and everybody's like, right, I kind of took a year off last year. I wasn't as involved as I could have been. I'm going to change that. I'm really going to get stuck back in, and I'm going to start doing stuff. So I think at least in this first few weeks of the year, people seem to be very bullish and quite active and really trying to get out there and do stuff. Now, yeah, of course, and the UK has its own struggles, and we've got all the taxes and everything else that are coming in. It's, we've got your business rates are going up, and it's going to be very challenging for small businesses and stuff. But I think it feels to me like people are a little bit more optimistic maybe, and at least, a little bit more nose to the grindstone this year. So I'm hoping that we'll, that will have some impact, and we'll all get stuck in and actually try and get some stuff done.
That feels like a really positive note to finish on and say that we're going to have a great 2026. I'm going to just shameless plug. I've got a new book out which is all about the future. So if anyone wants to read that, they can. And look, let's look forward to the next podcast, which I think we're going to cover quantum, AI, and fusion. And
let's talk about quantum.
The kind of perfect triangle, if you like, or virtuous circle of those. What would happen if we had all of those three things together, and what could that possibly create? So we'll gear into the future a bit with that. But other than that, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ben. It's been amazing to catch up.
Yep.
And we look forward to, I should say to the listeners, actually, please do reach out and contact us if you have any questions. We'd love to obviously take those questions into the show and give you responses. So I'd love to hear from people. And till next time, thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.